Hello, everybody. West Ham have finally woken up. They've realised the transfer window is open, and Alphonse Areola has signed for West Ham. You would have seen it yesterday. I believe it's a loan deal initially, £1.7 million fee with an option of £11 million, which seems like a snip. I brought the Euro expert along. We're going to call him Alex for the sake of the video because it might get a little bit boring. Alex, you know a lot about Areola. I wanted to get you on. You've been quite clear about your thoughts. You believe it's a top signing for West Ham.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's a big pleasure. But yeah, no Areola for West Ham. Tell you what, it's strange because we're used to West Ham and their transfer, especially last season. It's like so different. Selling Dean Garner and feeling like the world is imploding. Now you're getting Areola, who is without a doubt a UCL level goalkeeper. I think like just the broad thoughts. We were talking about it just off there. It's not only that it's a great signing, it's a better signing than other clubs who are looking for a goalkeeper are looking to make. Like people going in for Ramsdale, going in for Johnston. Johnston and Ramsdale, they could become very good goalkeepers, but Areola is already brilliant. And it's weird, West Ham. It doesn't feel right, but they've done it. They've got him in. It's very interesting.
Nine times out of 10, if it's too obvious to make, West Ham won't make it. So it is a bit surprising. I know West Ham fans watching this will know there was a little bit of a trade-off between Johnston and Areola, and it does feel like tactics-wise in those negotiations, it was between whether you could get a good deal for Sam Johnston or whether you could get Areola. But I've got to say, overall, I am pretty pleased. You mentioned names like Ramsdale that Arsenal are going to go and spend £30 million on, and you look at West Ham. And again, we could get into the board and the finances and how frustrating it is. But to have £1.7 million spent and save that money in other areas that West Ham really need it in, we're talking centre-back, possibly another centre midfielder, definitely a striker. I think it's an astute signing. And his performances for Fulham last season, take the stats out of it, were impressive. He's a big, impressive goalkeeper. He's 6'5". He's dominant in the air. Do you think he's an improvement on Fabianski? I'm interested to see because I know you're a neutral. So I wanted to see whether you feel that he has to come in as a number one ahead of Fabianski, or whether you feel that there is genuine competition between the two.
It's difficult because I feel like it's not like Chelsea when they had Kepa and they would have happily buried him in a field if it meant getting a new goalkeeper in. Yeah. But Fabianski, he's a competent goalkeeper. He's got a lot of respect. He's done a good job for West Ham. But I do think you have to put Areola as the number one, just because even though Fabianski is good, very old now. I think he's 36, right? And it's not to say you need to get him out of the team and he's not a Prem level goalkeeper, but it's just Areola can bring so much more to the team. So it's just so much more. I think my thoughts on it were you should put Fabianski in for cup games, and then I'd say play Areola in the league, just because there's a lot of points he could potentially get you. I mean, we'll go into the stats, but what they show is I believe Areola could save you about 5 or 6 more goals than Fabianski did last season, which is a big number.
Yeah, it's a crazy stat. I know the one you're talking about in terms of expected goals. Or it's really difficult for me, mate, to be honest, even on my videos, to get my head around some of the stats and what they mean. But he's well performing above the level that he should be, really. And I think it's only Jan Oblak is the only keeper in Europe that's performed better than him in that sense. So that's an improvement. My heartstrings pull with Fabianski because he's been such a top keeper for us. And I think it's probably the right time. You know, he's going out. I think he's only got a year left on his deal. We got it extended last season. But there is still a keeper in there. And he does keep picking up niggly little injuries. And to have two keepers, for me, again, I know you think Areola is the better keeper. They're not too far off each other. To have a player like that to come in or vice versa, it's really important. We've got a European campaign coming up. You need to call on squad depth of all kinds. And I'm really happy to have both of them because it's been a long, long time, if ever, that West Ham have had two number ones, essentially. So it's a luxury.
Yeah, you're giving me Roberto flashbacks there. But yeah, I think
I've had them, mate. I've had them. I can still see them in my head. Trust me, man. Nothing will get rid of them.
It's a good point. I think with Fabianski as well, as you say, last year of his contract, I think the best way to go forward is the Mark Noble treatment. Like you keep him in the squad, and I think he'll play a valuable role for Areola. Areola's 28, but that's not very old for a keeper. He's still got things to learn. We'll touch on, he's not had lots of game time in his career. So there's definitely things he can learn from Fabianski. But I think Areola, he's a lot more athletic as well. That you mentioned it really well, how big he feels in the goal. And I think the other thing is he gets across it really quickly. If there's a cross coming across the box and he's already at his near post, he'll be at the other end very sharply. And that's one thing that really catches the eye, I think, with him, that he can make the goal feel small, not only by his size, but how quickly he covers it.
Yeah, and it is Listen, I'm not digging out Fabianski. Don't take it wrong, West Ham fans, because trust me, I'm one of his biggest fans. It's sometimes teams, I think, and I saw it towards the end of the last season where he made a mistake at Newcastle, teams start to overload the box just in front of him from set pieces because they know it's quite difficult for him to manage. And I feel that with Areola in goal, and I imagine that he has been brought in as a number one. I don't think West Ham would have brought him in to sit on the bench for a season on loan. I think they are looking at trying to get him game time, like you say, have consistency, and then look to purchase him next summer. But he does iron out that issue where other teams try and take advantage of. And I do feel that there are significant parallels in terms of shot stopping. Fabianski's fantastic. He's single-handedly kept us in games. And we're talking about Areola being able to perform above his level and almost single-handedly keep Fulham in games. He can show that for West Ham. And that's exactly what we need at times.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just with Fabianski, well, if he's playing in cup competitions, it's not as if, like, you're in the Europa League, it's not as if you're going to play him against, I don't know, Oldham. Like, he's going to be still in pretty high profile games. He'll be happy about that. And I was just checking the stats and the thing we both mentioned there about post-shot expected goals. And expected goals. He said, struggle to get your head around it. I'm going to do the best job to explain it to you in the audience. So for anyone who's not aware, I'll keep it quick. Expected goals is quite simply a measure of the quality of chance created, right? So it works by looking at, I think the latest model that's generally done by the Bundesliga is that about 40,000 shots from all across the pitch. And they've worked out an average of how likely those shots are going in. For example, with a penalty, they've looked at, if you look at 1,000 penalties and 700 go in, 7 out of 10 chances it's going in then. 70% chance of a penalty becoming a goal. All right, so you can kind of find an average of a chance being converted into a goal. And with that, you can work out, with that, for example, Timo Werner would score a lot less than he's expected to because he can't shoot. Whereas Harry Kane, will score a lot more than he's expected to because he's a great finisher. And you can flip that on the goalkeepers. Someone like Kepa, he concedes a lot more than his expected goal value would suggest, showing he's conceded a lot more than he should. Whereas Areola, he conceded 7 goals less than he was meant to, which would show he's 7 goals better than the average keeper. I was checking it. Fabianski, he's also in the top, I think if I put the table up now, actually, yeah, he's in the top 5 in the Premier League. So
that's what I'm saying. That's the kind of parallels you're looking for.
Yeah, it is Arsenal vibes in a way of Martinez, Vitleno, 2 pretty good goalkeepers. So maybe it is a bit more of a harsher debate, but I do think you put Areola in because while Fabianski's top 5 or top 6, Areola is top. But he last season by this metric, which is one, even if you don't want to get your head around it too much, it's one that the clubs use when scouting goalkeepers. Areola was the best in the Premier League. So you're buying yourself potentially 3 or 6 more points next season with him in goal. So it's such a great signing.
I want to touch on one area of weakness that I saw, and I don't know, I wouldn't read too much into it anyway. Saving penalties. Fabianski saved 2, Sam Johnson saved 2 last season, but Areola didn't save any of his. Is that a cause of concern? Or again, it's hard, isn't it? I haven't really seen the penalties and I can't really remember, but do you think that's a little bit of a flash in the pan, so that nothing to worry about?
Well, actually, that is a really good thing to bring up because, no, this is probably his big weakness in his career. I think the last time I checked, sadly I haven't got it in front of me, but I think the last time I checked, he hasn't saved a penalty since 2016. I didn't
know it was that bad.
Yeah, no, I think the stat was, in his career, he's saved 7 and conceded 32. But I will say with goalkeeping, I think as we've shown in the past 5 or 6 years, it's become penalties. It's probably one of the easiest areas to coach. Like not only when reaching the corners, but the direction. So if West Ham have a good penalty coach, then I'm sure they can help Areola work on that. And as you get older, I think these things tend to improve. But that is one thing to look at there. If West Ham are conceding a penalty and you've got a chance to make a bet, don't bet on Areola saving it.
Yeah, it's funny. We've got one player that might not be able to save a penalty, and then we've got definitely one in Mark Noble that will score every penalty because he's that good at it. So it's nice to have that for the final season. I think it's an interesting point you mentioned about consistency because he has played or been at big clubs, PSG, Real Madrid, and he just hasn't had that game time. Do you feel that if he can get a full season under his belt at West Ham, that he's only going to improve? And like you touched on earlier, having a player like Fabianski in and around him to work off of, he will become an even better keeper than he already is.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think that allows us to pivot into a bit away from the sort of the stats and more about his career. Because, yeah, at PSG, he's never really been the number one. So he came through their academy. And when he was there, he was going with some goalkeepers you probably remember from FIFA, like Kevin Trapp or Salvatore Sirigu or Buffon when he weirdly went to France. And when he was there, he was kind of sharing game time with them. And then Keylor Navas came in and kind of ruined it. But in that time, he went on loan to a number of different clubs. I think the first one was Lens in the second tier of French football. Our favourite thing from that is he was named, I think he was in his early 20s where he was a goalkeeper there, and Lens got promoted. He was named the revelation of the year ahead of N'Golo Kante when he had his breakout year in France.
Wow.
And then he went to Villarreal after a couple of seasons in France on loan. He went to Villarreal and he broke the record at the club for the record of clean sheets and also the longest time without conceding a goal, which is, I think, 600 minutes, which isn't too far off Petr Cech's, which I think is close to 1,000. So even when he has played in those limited minutes, like at Fulham, as we know, we don't need to go into too much, he has consistently not only been good, but very, very good. And the clubs I've just mentioned who's on loan at, it wasn't as if he was doing good and they sent him back. They wanted to keep him, but PSG have never really been able to integrate him into the team.
Yeah, because they're constantly looking at either Navas or Donnarumma. It is a bit of a stretch when you start competing at that level. I think someone said they've got about 9 keepers on their books at the minute. So obviously West Ham have used that to their advantage. It's interesting. He very rarely makes mistakes as well. Very rarely. I think the only time that I think he got away with one was last season against Wolves for Fulham. And he's come flying out at Adama Traore, which is easy enough to do because of the pace and trying to deal with that. Do you feel that because of the way that West Ham play, we're not really a possession-based side, we're not looking to play out from the back? There is signs in pre-season that we're looking to be a bit more progressive when we're on the ball, but definitely defensively, we're still very much, let's get the ball clear, let's be conservative. Do you think that suits him as well? Because Fulham were a side that wanted to play out from the back, they wanted to keep the ball, and they did invite risks at times. Yeah,
I think it's a good balance, actually, because as you said, at Fulham and in the clubs he's been on loan at, he's not really had much time on the ball. It's been more, as you said, just kind of getting it clear. And even though Fulham did want to play it out, he spent the majority of his time in his own box. In fact, he was one of the lowest ranked keepers for actions outside of his own box, like sweeping. So I think at West Ham, it's a good blend because he's not going to be like an Edison, right? He's not going to be picking balls. He's not going to, spend too much time on the ball, but he'll be more comfortable and a bit more cultured than Fabianski would be. So I think it gives West Ham the option, right, where if they pass the ball back to Areola, he's not just going to play it to the left back or pelt it long. He has the ability to pick a bit of a better pass. So it's not exactly you're getting in, an Edison or an Allison who can rake these long passes. It's not a Claudio Bravo where he's uncomfortable on the ball and he just wants to get it clear. I think it's a really good mix, both for Areola and West Ham. I think, as you kind of mentioned, you want to play a bit more progressive. I think that's going to work because Areola he won't overhaul your style. We won't be an ill fit, but he will allow West Ham just to have a bit more space and freedom in what they want to do.
It's interesting. It is interesting. It feels like the chess pieces are kind of coming together, and we're seeing that in recent days with some of the players that we're linked with. So when we are talking about the 2 centre-backs and the goalkeeper, let's talk about one of the targets that West Ham have been linked with. It is Kurt Zouma. That's quite fresh, to be honest. I think allegedly there was a bid yesterday of around 20 million. Apparently West Ham might come back in for 25. Could be enough to get him to West Ham. I have my thoughts on it, but I know you have a very strong opinion on it. So I'll let you talk first, Alex. Let me know. First and foremost, before you go into the player, do you think it would be a good signing for West Ham?
Okay, I'll break this down. I think is Kurt Zouma would he be a player West Ham could sign? Is it good? It's all right. Is it good at 25 million? That's when my opinion comes in and says no, not necessarily because he isn't completely worth it, because he has got Premier League experience, but he's 26, and there's a reason why Chelsea aren't keeping him. Now, some people have said that he doesn't fit the system or that Chelsea got too many centre-backs. The one thing we should start on with Zouma, his big positive, is he's probably the best defender in the Premier League in the year. But whenever he's played for Chelsea, it feels like he's scored in the last season.
Yeah.
He's dominant. I think his aerial win stat's brilliant. But you have to think about it. Why would Chelsea not be playing a player who can potentially grab him a goal every few games from a corner? That's a big advantage. And I think the reason is because in defence, he's shown lapses in concentration. There's a good, I feel like highlights and compilations on Twitter and YouTube are an ill thing to go off, but there's a very good one that does do the rounds on Zouma of how generally he'll really, almost basically fail to track runs, and he'll look quite amateurish in defence at times. And I think for West Ham, he would do a lot better playing deeper. But I just think he could be more frustrating in that. And I think the crux of my issue more is West Ham have been linked to better defenders for around the same price. Now, there are some that I think are a little unrealistic. I was hyping about Sven Botman the other day on Twitter.
Oh,
it would be
yeah.
if West Ham got him in, that's a sign of the year instantly, straight away. But Sven Botman's got Champions League football, and there's a lot of interest in him. So it might be a bit tricky to persuade it. But even Nikola Milenkovic from Fiorentina, which, I mean, you're a West Ham YouTuber, you've probably done a video on him about 10 times, right? You've had so
Not
many.
yet. He's the only one I haven't really bought into the hype over, because I haven't seen enough of him. I don't know. I know his aerial duel stats are very, very impressive, and it is interesting to see that mould of Zouma and Milenkovic, two aerially dominant centre backs. It's exactly what West Ham need. You look at Craig Dawson this season, again, a threat from set pieces, good at defending set pieces, very statutory in terms of what they do in defensive attributes. Do you think Zouma and Milenkovic, either or, are improvements on a Craig Dawson, possibly on an Issa Diop, and they are good partners for Angelo Ogbonna? Because when Ogbonna's fit, he's our best centre back currently.
That's a good question, to be fair. I think Zouma may be a marginal improvement, but Milenkovic is a lot better. So you mentioned he's aerially dominant. The other thing is he was the best tackler in Serie A last season of any player in terms of winning the ball off players trying to dribble past him. By that stat, he was literally the best. Defenders, midfielders, not even in his club, just in the entire league. And also Milenkovic is 23. And even though I think, especially people who have a bit older than myself, we think of Fiorentina, we tend to think of a top 6 Serie A club, like a big team. They've been really poor for the past few seasons. Like, I think last year they narrowly escaped relegation. This year they finished 13th. So offering Milenkovic to move to West Ham for around £20 million to move to London, he's not playing European football, so it's actually quite a bit of a step up. And he is used to defending deeper. And even if he's slightly as error prone as Zouma, right? At 23, you can coach it out of him. He's young enough to be excusable making those mistakes. Whereas Zouma, I think signing him, I think he is what he is. He's not going to improve as much. And 2, I don't think even if he fails, you can resell him for much. Like, you don't want another Felipe Anderson where you're selling him for $2 million in 2 years' time. Whereas Milenkovic, I think with Milenkovic, you're always going to make the money back on him, even if he doesn't quite tick. Like Issa Diop, you could sell him for 10 million still right now.
Do you know, it's interesting because you are a neutral and you have got a different view on it. You're looking at it more from you're talking about resale value, whereas we're looking at it from, can we get a player and is an improvement of what we've already got? So the way I look at it with Zouma is he is an improvement. I'd argue, how old is he? We're talking 25, 26 maybe?
26.
There's something about him where I think he's tailor-made for West Ham and David. But there's something about him where I think David Moyes would love to have him in the team. And I just wonder whether him and Ogbonna is a really good partnership. I'm not writing off Milenkovic, but I can't speak enough to argue for him in there. But with Zouma, again, we talk about consistency with Areola. Zouma's a player, again, that's kind of been in and out of Chelsea. You know, Frank Lampard liked him. Then he got taken out by Tuchel. There have been mistakes in there. There are lapses of concentration. But there's something about him where, and I've heard he's better in a back 4 than he is in a back 3. And that would be encouraging to me, because I feel that West Ham this season are going to go 4-2-3-1. Do you feel that with the protection of Declan Rice and Thomas Souček, that he's less likely to make those mistakes? He's got a bit of an insurance there.
I feel I'll level with you. I mean, first of all, I think if there is actually one coach who could probably transform him, one of us, like, coach these things out of him, it would be David Moyes. I think more than anything, Moyes is a very, very good defensive coach. I mean, as you said, look what he's done with Ogbonna. He's made him a brilliant defender. So
he's always been good, mate. He's always been good.
He's leveled up a lot, though.
He's improved. No, there was, to be fair, there was actually a spell where Ogbonna did dip after his injury, but really, ever since he's come back, probably since Project Restart, he's been phenomenal.
Yeah. So I think Moyes could be the person to change Zouma around, maybe. But I think with Rice and Souček, he's definitely going to get a lot more protection than Chelsea. And I think the big thing is, at Chelsea, his issue was when he's running back. Well, the issue is he doesn't run back. I think when a team will counter-attack, I think the best way to describe an issue is there was a game, I think, against Southampton where him or someone else lost the ball and the other team ran towards Mendy in goal. And there's a player Zouma should be tracking, very basically should be tracking is running the into the box, and he's just kind of walking and ball watching is the best way to describe it. And the player he's left ultimately just taps in a rebound he could have easily cleared. So with that sort of thing, maybe that'll be eliminated to an extent with West Ham, but not fully, to my opinion. I think if you sign Zouma, it's a gamble on can David Moyes eliminate his weaknesses? Because if you can, physically he's brilliant, and in the air he's brilliant. It's just if he can eliminate those weaknesses, and also if his errors can suffice a full London stadium, because we've seen how toxic that place can be. If he makes one of his errors, he might get shouted at.
With all due respect, we're used to it with East Diop on occasion and making a few errors. So look, I think it is an interesting point, because I did watch him against Southampton, and he did make the mistake that led to their goal last season. And it was a part of me that thought positionally maybe he's a little bit off. I wonder whether you're right with David Moyes. He's got a way of working to the team's strengths. You know, you look at Aaron Creswell at left back, isn't necessarily the most athletic, can get caught out, struggles with pace. Pablo Fornals always plays on the left-hand side and always tracks back and protects him. And that's how West Ham did so well last season, because we were so good at dealing with our weaknesses and showcasing our strengths. And that's why we got to where we are as a team. So maybe it is a good fit. But before I let you go, I want to hear your thoughts on this striker search, because you alluded to it before we came on. And now we've got to this stage in the video. I am interested to hear your thoughts. You know, we've been linked with Tammy. Do you think Tammy's a good fit for West Ham? Do you think that's a player they should be going for?
It's a good point. Yeah, I think the striker one's kind of weird, right? Because especially earlier this year, I was talking to a few West Ham channels, and it was all about the striker, and you haven't signed anyone. It's all gone quiet, really. So I did mention it because Tammy Abraham's the one linked, and I just feel like Abraham's a kind of similar to Zouma in a way where I don't think he's got an overall negative, but I think he could be quite frustrating for West Ham purely because his goal conversion. Because physically he's very good, and if Moyes can make him clinical, then he'd be brilliant. But last season in the Premier League, the season before, when he was playing every game under Lampard, he did score about 15 goals, but he missed 22 big chances, which is a huge number. And you know, with Antonio, right, where it feels like, I think the best line is he's the best striker in the world until he's the worst striker in the world. To a lesser extent, can feel a bit like that with Abraham. And I guess again with Zouma is he's going to come at an inflated fee. I just think for a West Ham, there might be a better place to go back in for Hozek and Seema, the guys you've been linked with, especially Seema, because I think that'd be the really interesting one. But Abraham as well, he does give me a bit of Aller vibes, so I'm not totally sold on him. But if he came in, let's put it this way: if he came into West Ham, right? If he came into West Ham, I'd be like, okay, let's see what he can do. Whereas Zouma, I'm thinking, okay, you've got some work to do here.
Yeah, it's with Abraham, I'm very much on board with it because of the goals. I do think goals is a good currency. To get 15 goals in a Premier League is an important start. We forget sometimes with Tammy, he's only 23. It feels like he's been around for ages. And again, like you mentioned with Milenkovic, there is potential there to change. What I would say about him is that I have reservations regarding overall hold-up play. I think he will offer us something different to Antonio, because Antonio isn't a natural number 9 and Tammy is. And that movement, he's used to playing in that role. That will give us a different element, but it does mean that we will have to try and accommodate him, and it won't be the same as having Mikel Antonio up front. And that's the only thing. But I wouldn't write it off, because I think if West Ham can adapt the way we're playing, and I'm seeing stuff in pre-season in terms of possession, the 3 number 10s that we have, or it feels like Bowen going in beyond, there is something there. And I do feel that with Pereira as well, if he comes into the club, you're looking at another creative source. Tammy could thrive, but I don't think it's an easy transition. I actually think Zouma is probably more likely to come in and sort of perform very instantly. Tammy, it could take 2 to 3 months before we start to see him and he develops other elements of his game.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good way of wording it. I think you've actually convinced me a bit more on Zouma, especially like the fit in the system. I think I'm still there's definitely better options, but if you can, it's not the worst. I think with Tammy, it's more that his natural ability is a bit more blurred with playing at Chelsea, right? At Chelsea, you're going to get an ocean of chances, whereas West Ham, you're less likely to. So it's about how he can transition.
That's interesting. That's interesting you say that, because every time I watch us this season or last season, we do create chances. It's just about being clinical. And that's where missing big chances becomes an issue, because I think what all West Ham need, I'm convinced even when we've had Mikel Antonio out the side, it's been frustrating more because of what he offers outside of it. I always feel that West Ham will get enough chances in a game to score 1 or maybe 2. But when we are taking the front foot in games, we are creating 3-4 chances. And I saw it against Manchester United last season in the first half. We should have been clear by 2-3 goals. That's where I think Tammy comes into it. But he could miss chances. But equally, I think just generally him being in the right area, him being confident in front of goal, there's something there. And you can never underestimate a natural number 9. And West Ham have been crying for a natural number 9 for years now, or probably since Arnie's left. And he's not really a number 9 in essence. Yeah. So.
And to further that point, I guess, I mean, I was actually doing a video recently about the Big 5 leagues, and it's about shot distance. So I'm not sure if you guys know, but last season, West Ham, no other team in Europe took their shots closer to the goal, which would show they're creating like probably the best chances in Europe. So you're kind of right. If you do have like a good finisher, then there's a potential lot of goals there. I guess with Abraham, it's a bit more those big chances thing. That's the thing to look at. But as well, to count on myself, we've not seen a lot of time with him in the Premier League. So it's harsh to call him a bad finisher or a good finisher. And if obviously West Ham, we're hoping they've got scouts that are way better than me or you put together. So if they're seeing Abraham,
yeah, hopefully,
if they're seeing an Abraham,
any at all,
if they're seeing an Abraham that natural finishing and they bring him in, then it probably will be a good move. And I said, I think physically very strong and movement-wise as well. I like it. Just that hold-up play, like you mentioned, that's the thing to watch out for and hopefully grow.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of improvement for me off the ball. I think it comes with time anyway, and that's been kind of the issue with Tammy. He's been at so many different clubs. He's always proven that he can score, which is why I kind of value him and think, actually, and I was on the fence before, but I look at how David Moyes rates him. He's definitely got a plan for what he wants from Tammy Abraham, and he will get the best out of him. But would you go and spend that 35 mil, put it all on the table and get him in? Or would you take a gamble? Because Holacek really and Zouma are gambles effectively. Do you think West Ham should take a gamble at this time, or should we play it safe? Do you even think Tammy's a safe bet?
I think Tammy's a relatively safe bet. You know he's going to get you some goals, but it's whether those goals are 10 or 20 goals a season, right? I think 35 million, that's the issue. That's a lot of money. And you said, would you rather spend 35 million on Tammy or on Holacek or Zouma? I reckon if you're spending 35 million, you could get both. Let's be realistic. Like these two guys, they're not going to be worth more than 20 million each. And you can whittle that down because they're still playing from worse leagues. But Zouma's shown in European competition that he's brilliant. Holacek, the signs look really good. And even then, I'm sure you could get someone maybe a little less proven, but from around Europe and potentially bring him in. I do think as well, maybe loan a striker, and you mentioned Pereira as a final thought. If you can get Mateus Pereira in, that's also a brilliant signing. I didn't realize how good he was last season. He contributed to 17 goals at West Brom, and he is barely on the ball. I'd love to see what he could do at West Ham.
That was the thing for me. I did a video, I think it was probably 2 weeks ago now, comparing him to Jesse Lingard. They are different types of players. How direct Jesse Lingard is, Pereira is probably more of a playmaker. But statistics-wise, goal contributions, they're very similar. You look at both teams that don't have a lot of possession, very similar. Defensively as well, Pereira works a lot harder than people give him credit for. And he did score a goal against West Ham from distance, so I can't quite forget that. If West Ham, and I'll play devil's advocate here, went and get Areola, Tammy Abraham, Zouma and Pereira, where do you think we can go this season? Ideally, I'd like a little bit more squad depth. If I'm honest, I think we do need to look at left-back long-term and possibly centre midfield. But do you think West Ham can sustain a top-half finish, possibly push for Europe again?
Well, here's the thing. If you get all four of them, I have no complaints because that's brilliant. I guess the thing with Tammy and Zouma quickly is I think if you spend money on one of them, it's hard to get a lot of players in because it's a lot of money. You get all four in. The thing is, it will be the second season where West Ham, you're expected to dip a little bit, just a natural consequence of how well you did last season. But Moyes is clearly moving in the right direction. I think it's fair to say he's got his mojo back. I'd say it's still top 8. I think that'd be the realistic expectation. And even though you finish well this season, top 8 might sound a little disappointing. I think that's still, especially in this climate, really good. I'd expect you, to be honest, if you're getting Areola and Abraham in, I'd expect you to finish above Arsenal at this rate.
I'd hope so. I know they're struggling a little bit with Arteta, so I wouldn't write it off. You know what? I've said 9th in my prediction league, and I don't think that's bad. I really don't. You look at the pressure of European football. Look at where West Ham were at before last season as well. We were really struggling, and Moyes has done brilliantly. There will be a natural dip. The number of games we've got to play is a hell of an ask. But I do think even in pre-season, West Ham do look good. There are signs. I know you can't read too much into beating Celtic 6-2, but even players like Ben Rama, Fornals, Bowen, they look like they're going to take the game up to another level. And West Ham could play some attractive stuff. Top half, I've got to be happy, mate.
Yeah,
I've got to be honest.
I think with West Ham, I think the thing would be more about creating a bit more of a positive atmosphere. Like you see, like Leicester, 2 seasons in a row now, they finished outside the Champions League. Many people will call that a failure, but players are still wanting to go to Leicester because they've built such a good identity. I think West Ham are on the border of becoming like a club that players will want to go to. I mean, you're in London, so it's already a good thing.
Well, that's exactly what I think with the Zouma thing. The Zouma was basically bang on to go to Sevilla. They were going to bring in Koundé, and he stopped and turned around and went, I don't want to go there. I want to stay here. Areola's another one. So Moyes has actually managed to change the perception of West Ham. And I think even as West Ham fans, we forget, hang on a minute, we finished 6th. We were 2 points off the Champions League. It's an attractive position.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's the idea thing to keep them going. Even if you finish 9th, 10th, or 11th, if you can do respectably well in Europe and respectably well in the Cup and even have a few wins against the big six in the league, even if you're finishing 9th and 10th, as long as you're bringing that identity going, you're already planning the recruitment, then you can expect, I think the idea really would be to have a solid season now so you can have an even better season the year after, which is quite long term, but I think that's a good way to look at it.
I completely agree. It's taking advantage of being in a European competition as well, with players looking at us and then attracting them to that vision, and fingers crossed some sort of takeover gets done within the next 2 years and we can build. Listen, Alex, I'll let you go. It's been absolutely brilliant having you on. Honestly, the stats have been fantastic. You're giving a little bit of insight into Zouma. We've gone back and forth. I've changed your mind, so I expect an apology on Twitter. You can just at me. But let the people know you've obviously got your own YouTube channel. You've got your Twitter account. Let them know where they can find you and follow you.
Oh, thank you very much. Yep, you can find me on YouTube or Twitter or TikTok at EuroExpert. On TikTok, don't worry, I'm not doing dances. You can find some fun player reviews, probably some players going to West Ham, maybe an Areola review again. And yeah, on YouTube, you might find some other videos like that. So feel free to come and check me out. Yeah, go check him out. Cheers, Alex, mate. Thank you very much. Take care, everybody. There will be a few videos out in the next couple of days. I'm going to try and get a few of the boys back on. We'll do a bit of a podcast type vibe, talking about the board, transfers. I'll do more player profiles, maybe cut into Kurt Zouma a little bit more in terms of my thoughts on him. And fingers crossed, listen, we start the season where we've got Newcastle. I think it's only a week and a bit, mate. That's unreal. I can't believe the Prem's come around so quick. So I'm absolutely buzzing. Take care, everybody. Drop a like on the video, and I'll chat to you all very shortly.